individuals that don't believe that this exists. There were a lot of people that didn't believe post-traumatic stress disorder existed. They made fun of soldiers for not being able to handle it when they came back, not being able to handle select things. But of course, now we know that PTSD does exist. The question is, does dissociative identity disorder exist? And the answer is, well, I don't know. It's up to you. You can decide one way or the other. I was talking to Emery after class, and he mentioned the fact that soldiers will do this. Soldiers will act one way when they're in a stressful combat situation, and their personalities seem to change when they're in another situation. The question is, did they black out when they change their personality? And the answer is usually they don't. They understand who they are. They are able to deal with different situations with different personalities. The ability of normal people to produce apparently different personality characteristics as a result of hypnosis or suggestion, together with the malleability of the memory and the controversies of recovered memories, led Spanos in 1994 to propose a socio-cognitive model of DID development. One of the things you have to remember about dissociative identity disorder is the fact that if they don't seek counseling, nobody ever knows that they have more than one personality. Because there's not a professional that has dealt with this before. If they just go and see the doctor, MDs don't understand what DID is, or maybe they do understand it. But of course, what's the probability that they're going to be able to bring out more than one personality? But of course, somebody that is trained in dealing with this, they will be able to get this individual to the different personalities to come out. They will talk to them and say, I need the personality that deals with abuse, when you're actually being molested. And of course, they won't use that word. They will use a term that individual understands for sex, and they will say, I need that personality to come out. Now, a doctor's not going to say that. An MD isn't going to say, I need the personality that deals with the sexual intercourse to come out. But of course, a counselor is, and that's how they get these different personalities to come out. I was watching All About Eve the other day, a couple nights ago, and she was able to get her personality to come out if she was in a stressful situation. As long as everything was okay, she was Eve White, and as soon as somebody started challenging her, or it was a situation that Eve Black could handle, then she would look down, and when she looked back up, she was the different personality. It was really kind of interesting because she blacked out. Eve White didn't know what was going on when Eve Black was that personality was out. And we see these things, from time to time. If you've ever dealt with this before, Spanos suggests that symptoms of multiple personality tend to develop after rather than before contact with the therapist. And this is true. It's the therapist that makes the personalities come out. And nobody else will see these unless this individual was in a stressful situation. With Eve White and Eve Black, her daughter injured herself, or her daughter did something. And because her daughter did that, Eve Black came out. Of course, Eve Black was not the mother of the child. So when she started dealing with the child as Eve Black, her personality was completely different. And it really scared the child, which was kind of interesting. So this is what we call an iatrogenic model. As you remember, iatrogenic means that it is induced by the counselor. An iatrogenic model of DID is consistent with the most currently available information on the disorder, of course. So Spanos may have been correct that it is the counselor that allows this other personality to come out. Now the problem is, of course, there could be we could all have multiple personality in this room, but unless we seek a counselor, we're not going to know it, because it's only the counselor, and it's a counselor that's trained to deal with this, that will be able to get those different personalities to come out. Does all that make sense? Now this may be one of the reasons why we don't see it all that frequently. Doctors don't see it. Nurses don't see it. If you're a social worker, potentially you're not going to deal with that aspect of the individual, so they wouldn't see it. The process of treating DID involves a therapeutic relationship of trust and cooperation, an understanding of the network of alters, treatment for the trauma, and work toward reintegrating the different personalities. What they try to do is they try to get rid of select personalities, the ones that are more, that are less adaptive. They try to get rid of those personalities. What they want is for all those personalities to merge into the one individual. And that's what happened with Eve White and Eve Black. She had a very backwards personality, and she had a very outgoing personality. And they merged the two of them together, and they made they made Eve. Finally, she became Eve. No well-controlled efficacy studies are available for DID treatment, either with pharmacotherapy and psychotherapy. When I was going to Walden University, working on my PhD, one of my professors was the foremost counselor for DID. He was a psychiatrist, and he was one of my instructors. He was a fascinating individual. Had the most amazing stories you've ever heard. I won't repeat them now because, well, a lot of them had to do with sex, so I won't repeat them. It was kind of funny. He was this little bitty, scrawny, skinny guy, and he's talking about all this, this sexy stuff and whatnot. And some of the people were kind of offended, but he was just talking about his cases. But it was really kind of interesting. I will not disclose any of those stories to you. Depersonalization, derealization. Okay, so why? Why does sex have so much to do with this? Why is there always a nasty story that is tied to all these people suffering from dissociative identity disorder? Why is there always a really nasty story? Why? Where does DID come from? I'm sorry? Repression of?
Could be like your
sexual desires or sexual molestation.
Or sexual what?
Sexual molestation. And it's usually the mother. Like I said before, if it's the father, they tend not to have these problems, but if it's the mother, wow.
It's in conflict with the mother.
Exactly. And for that reason, of course, some of these stories are really nasty. I mean, you can only imagine what some of these stories are. I was shocked, and shoot, I worked in an emergency room, and I've seen all this stuff come in over and over and over again. But I mean, I was shocked with some of the things that were causing these individuals to fragment like this, their personalities to fragment. It was really kind of horrible. If you remember Billy Milligan, when he was 7 years old, well, I didn't tell you this part of the story, but when Billy Milligan was 7 years old, his third stepfather took him out and had him dig his own grave and told him he was going to kill him. And he made him lay down in the grave. And he told him he was going to bury him alive. And he made him lay out in that grave all night long. And then whenever he was bad, he would take him back out to the grave and have him lay down in the grave. And you can imagine how horrible that is.
So a lot of this goes back to the parenting?
Right. Right. And usually it's the female, but in Billy Milligan's case, it was his stepfather's. And his mother was kind of whacked out anyway, and she kept marrying all these abusive men who would abuse her as well. And of course, Billy became part of these, in some instances, he became part of the sexual games that these individuals were playing with his mother. So as you can imagine, it's really kind of ugly. And that's the reason, that a lot of these stories are pretty ugly stories. Ones that I would rather not relate in class, of course. But you understand the degree of horror that these individuals were going through. and the degree of sexuality. And of course there was sexual repression that took place because they didn't know what normal sexual reactions were supposed to be. Because as children they were introduced to sexuality in a very unnatural way. And for that reason, of course, a lot of their sexual ideas they had to repress because they were so unnatural. I don't know, whatever you would like to say about it. Anyway, that's what we're dealing with here. Depersonalization, derealization disorder involves the feelings of detachment or separation from oneself, or feelings as though objects and individuals in the surrounding environment were unreal. Okay, it makes you feel like you're a little kid and all of your toys are alive, or your parents are not really alive. It's you getting the wish that your brothers and sisters weren't really human, which may be true. I mean, it's always a possibility that some of my brothers and sisters, I'm not exactly sure if they were human either. But of course, sometimes you wish that they weren't there. Sometimes you wish that you were an only child, And at these times, you would feel that the individual was not real. It would make you feel better if they weren't real. When transitory, these feelings are relatively common. The DSM-5 estimates that half of all adults have experienced the sensation of being separated from themselves, of not being part of their being, of rocks being alive, of toys being able to move themselves. This is natural. And like it says, half of adults have had these ideas and sensations. In depersonalization, derealization disorder, such feelings are persistent or recurrent. They cause marked distress and are associated with impairment in daily functioning. And because they have these ideas, they can't function normally. The lifetime prevalence of depersonalization, derealization disorder is about 2%. Average age of onset appears to be around 16 years of age. Why 16? What is it about being 16 years old?
Adolescence.
Adolescence, exactly. Puberty. Your brain is changing anyway. So things don't really quite feel right. I don't know how you guys went through puberty, but when I was going through puberty, I couldn't sleep. And I didn't sleep for days or weeks. I'm not exactly sure when I did sleep. I'd get up and hit rocks with a broom handle. As soon as the sun came up, I'm hitting rocks with a broom handle. I can't sleep. It was driving me crazy. Or whatever. Anyway, it was not real. I mean, there was a lot of unreal things. There were really strange thoughts going through my mind. So puberty, it's when your brain is changing. Has something to do with that. It's rare after the age of 25. Normally, after the age of 25, that's when your brain becomes an adult brain. The episodes may be very brief or last for years. It tends to be chronic and worsens under stressful situations. The DSM-5 states that the male to female ratio for the disorder is 1:1. So there's as many females with the problem as there are males. Carla in Disneyland. Carla had wanted to visit Disneyland since she was old enough to remember. When she turned 13, her family finally relented, and they took her for a week in the Magic Kingdom, and that is Disneyland. Everything was fine for the first 2 days. Two cartoon characters from Alice in Wonderland, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, grabbed Carla's hands and started dancing with her in front of Cinderella's castle. Carla broke into a sweat and had to sit down. The legs of the people around her lost their bodies, and Carla fixated on the popcorn strewn all over the ground. So she's got all these cartoon characters, and all of a sudden the humans don't seem human anymore. Carla thought of escaping on one of the rides. When she got on board, she saw that one of those mechanical people was running the ride, and she realized that the ride threatened her very existence. After finally exiting the ride, she ran into Smee of Peter Pan for comfort. He gave her a magic pirate toque to protect her. As you can see, he's putting a pirate toque on her head. The people's legs became robot legs like most of the mechanical people in all of the rides and exhibits. It seemed that the only real creatures were the ones with soft legs and soft body parts. Carla began running from one to the other for a real hug. She needed to touch somebody that was real. The tinny music seemed to follow her everywhere. Has anybody been to Disneyland? It's a small world. After all, just plays constantly. Oh, it drives you crazy. So when she hears this song, it means fear to her. The people all around her moved mechanically. It was just the soft cartoon characters who were self-animated. When some mechanical creatures tried to force her to leave, she tried to hide behind Pluto. When she finally left, she was shaking so hard and crying that the mechanical creatures yelled at her and told her that they would never bring her back to the Magic Kingdom if she kept acting so silly. She had an episode of depersonalization and derealization. Of course, obviously, the mechanical creatures were the real humans, and the cartoon characters that she saw as real were actually not real at all. They were cartoon characters. Okay. Anyway, and this is the way this kind of thing takes place. Yes, sir.
Do you think this is the same thing that people experience when they, like, for exorcisms and possessions and stuff like that?
Wow, that's a good question. That's an excellent question. I'm not Catholic, so I don't really understand exorcism, but I really couldn't say. But it makes a lot of sense. The demons are possessing me, that everybody else is unreal. Yeah, that's a possibility. Yes.
I thought about that when you said you gave her the hat, and I thought, because they always say that it's not really an exorcism, but something that the priest did allow the person to think that it's okay for the spirit to leave.
Oh.
Like psychologically, and then they get better.
Okay.
So that's always the psychological answer.
That's a possibility. I never even thought about that before. Yeah, I've never really put the two and two together like that before. Very interesting. Interesting theory. So where does this come from? Nobody knows. Nobody knows why all of a sudden in your brain real things are not real and unreal things are real. We don't know. We're not exactly sure where it comes from. No data or familial or genetic influences have been found. Simeon in 2003 reported that immediate participants amongst 117 reviewed cases of the disorder included severe stress, panic, depression, and drug use. So a lot of times, I don't know about drug use. It really all depends on what kind of an experience you have while you're on the drugs, but possibly, it could be the drugs that have caused you to think that what is real is not real and what is real isn't real. Anyway, so it could be the drugs. But of course, it also could be stress. It could be wishful thinking. Remember, we're wishing that our brothers and sisters weren't real, right? And that they would maybe magically just go away. Evidently you like your brothers and sisters. I congratulate you. My brothers and sisters are thousands of miles away, so I don't have to worry about it. Okay. The DSM-5 notes that there is a clear connection between the disorder and childhood interpersonal trauma. So maybe that has something to do with it as well. If you remember, there are a lot of kids that wish that they had a protector, that somebody would come and protect them. They would like Spider-Man, so they'd start playing video games, because in the video game they can become this all-powerful creature, and they can defeat all of their enemies. So if they're being bullied at school, if they're in having some kind of a traumatic event, if their parents are getting divorced, potentially one of the things that they can do, they can take control of a situation. And what is that situation? That situation may potentially be a video game. Well, back before video games, or back before people could live in a fantasy land, potentially they still had these fantasies, and of course they manifested themselves in this disorder. Does all that make sense? Okay. So is there a problem with video games? Should we ban video games because it may cause kids to have strange ideas? They thought about banning video games. You know, this school shooting thing has been going on for a while. But they thought of banning video games after Columbine, after Klebold and Harris shot up Columbine High School, because they were playing video games. They thought of doing away with it. Does that make sense? Do I have any gamers in here? No gamers? Sorry, it's not admitting you're not a gamer. We got no gamers. You're not a gamer, Chris. No gamers? Okay, well. I can't even turn my damn telephone on. How could I be a gamer? I can't. Is there an app for that? To be a gamer? I don't know. Let me put my phone away. Anyway. So how do we treat these individuals? Most of them are relatively young. Most of them are adolescents that are going through these things. Like it said, rarely happens after 25. Usually the average is about 16. That means we've got a lot of 13, 14, 15-year-olds, 16, 17, 18-year-olds that are going through this. It really all depends on when they go through puberty. Yes, sir.
How does it relate between the ratio between boys and girls having this?
1-to-1. 1-to-1.
I was thinking back again, there was another story, wish I could remember all the particulars to it. A boy was possessed.
Okay.
He had a sexual relationship with his aunt,
Okay.
and she introduced him to a Ouija board as well, and then eventually he got possessed and he went to a hospital, and they couldn't treat him psychiatrically, and then they took him to a Catholic hospital, and they performed an exorcism on him. It just sounds just like the same thing you're talking about here.
And it worked. I got rid of the Ouija demon that had gotten into it. But he'd had sex with his aunt. That seems a little unnatural, I guess. A little bit. Maybe a little bit. Maybe just a little bit. Okay, so how are we going to treat these guys? Well, other than exorcism, and I certainly can't perform. Is there anybody in here that can do that? No? No? Any priests that we have? Okay. Okay. Other than that, we can treat them with SSRIs. I'm sorry, we can't because they don't work. If we do treat them with SSRIs, it's just as effective as if we give them a sugar pill or a Tic Tac and tell them that it's a pill. Although in a small uncontrolled trial, the opiate receptor site blocker naltrexone was associated with a 30% improvement in symptoms. So we can treat them with naltrexone. And as those of you from substance use and abuse know, naltrexone, we can use naltrexone to treat alcoholism, to treat opioid overdoses, to treat cocaine, to treat anything, crystal meth. We can give you naltrexone, and the next time, if you ever light up a doobie, which is a marijuana cigarette, if you ever light it up, you won't have any reaction from the marijuana as exciting as that is. Naltrexone, it blocks that opiate receptor site, so it takes away the pleasure of whatever you're trying to do. Hypnosis and a variety of psychotherapies have been employed in individual cases, but no solid data on relative effectiveness of these treatments is available. Other specified dissociative disorders. This category is used for sub-threshold dissociative conditions in which symptoms may be milder or even more acute. Unspecified dissociative disorders used for those cases in which the dissociative conditions have been described elsewhere. Okay. Okay, and like I told you before, this is a chapter where you can accept it, you can reject it, you can say DID doesn't exist, you can say hypochondriasis is a pile of crap, if you want to do that. So this is one of those chapters that we aren't sure. We're not exactly sure. They're malingering. Remember we talked about malingering. So you can lie about this stuff and make it look like you've got a disease. Yes, sir.
Does this result in multiple personalities?
You mean depersonalization, derealization?
Yeah.
No.
Just the prior one does, though, right?
Yeah, just the prior. And that has to do with, well, like I said before, it has to do with a lot of really a horrible trauma that you've gone through. And normally it's horrible trauma from somebody that's not really supposed to be doing these kinds of things.
Do they use multiple personalities? Do they have their own specific personality? Like they can. You remember you talked the other day about some
Right.
left-handed and right-handed.
Right. Yeah, usually they will have a general personality, whatever the personality would have been had they not had all these other personalities. They have one specific personality that is their general personality.
But not as far as like to be another nationality or have another language.
Well, they remember the one guy had your normal personality would be the personality that you grew up with. That's your one major personality. And then they will have other personalities to protect them if they get into a situation. If they're bullied, then the strong personality will come out. If they're sexually molested, they have another personality that will come out. And we kind of talked about this last time, or after class, that military people sometimes will have different personalities. But the difference is, I think the difference is, and I would say that the difference is that they don't black out when they have one personality or the other. If they did, then maybe it would be multiple personalities. That's exciting. That would be, I know. Rats. Anyway. These disorders attempt to classify a diverse, what are we talking about? Anyway, when we were talking about this, of course, we're talking about malingering. And if you can lie, potentially you can just make this stuff up. You can say that you were molested by your mother. You can say that you're possessed by demons. Is being possessed by demons real? That's a question that we would have to come up with. The DID, if you've ever seen the movie Sybil, Sybil was not real. She made it up, and she knew that she was lying throughout the entire episode. And once they made the movie, of course, they wrote a book. They made the movie. She made lots of money. Just before she died, she admitted that she made it all up. But that doesn't mean that all DID is made up. That's just that one case. So potentially, Billy Milligan was real. He had a lesbian personality as well as his male personalities. So I don't know. That's the dissociative disorders. But we're going to start talking about personality disorders. Now these are, everybody agrees that these are real. These are real, okay?
Just back to what we just covered.
Yeah.
Are there tests that you can do to see if someone's lying?
No. If you watch NCIS, Gibbs could probably figure out if they're lying. But,
in a perfect world.
Yeah, in a perfect world where Leroy Jethro Gibbs is your counselor or whatever. Yeah, but no, there's no way. I mean, it's whatever you believe. And of course, we can get two psychologists. We can both sit down and start talking to somebody. And I'm going to say, wow, he's DID. And you're going to say, no, he's lying. He's lying through his teeth.
What about people that lie and they tell the same lie so much that they start to believe that the lie is true?
And that happens. That does happen. That does happen.
Was that like the psychological or is it?
I'm sorry?
Is that psychological?
Is that a dissociative order?
I'm sorry?
Is that a dissociative order?
No. No, it wouldn't be a dissociative disorder. No, we're going to talk about pathological liars in just a second. It's a personality disorder. As it turns out, it's a personality disorder. As much fun as that is, good liars are you can't
you don't know whether they're lying or not because they're such good liars. And as I said before, we're going to talk about antisocial personality disorder. These guys are the best liars in the world. The only person that comes close to them are alcoholics. Alcoholics are so good at it. I mean, they create chaos and they lie and they get all the people around them to support their habit, their alcoholism. And they'll tell you anything to get their booze. They're worse than any other group as far as lying is concerned. You know, okay. Okay, this is the 8th week and I'm on chapter 8. I know. Johnny's so excited today. You clapped last part. There we go. Thank you. Okay. I'm all caught up with this stuff. I know if you've been in other classes with me, right, Chris? I'm always behind. I know. But I'm caught up today, so this is chapter 8. What is the personality? Personality is not a thing, but a way of acting and thinking. Individuals develop broad characteristic ways of viewing and organizing their world, interacting with others, and coping with challenges. So we maintain our personality in order to get along with people. That's why we do it. We'll have different personalities for different circumstances, and that's okay. Because when if you're at the White House, you want to act one way, and if you're at home, you can act a totally different way. You don't have to act like you're all dressed up and talking to the president and wearing new shoes and polishing your shoes and whatnot. These approaches to the world tend to become more stable and predictable as people grow from childhood to adolescence to adulthood. If you think of who you were when you were a child, do you act the same way you did when you were a kid? We talked about this before. When you join the military, we talk about this as well. When you join the military, it changes your personality because they break you down to build you back up. And when you come back after basic training, and you've been through basic training twice, you're a different personality. Your personality is completely different. And we talked about this, how you can look at somebody before they go to basic training and they act one way, and when they come out, they're completely different. I wasn't a very good soldier, so my personality didn't change that much. I wish I had been a better soldier, of course. A personality disorder is a very rigid pattern of inner experiences and outward behavior. The pattern is seen in most of the person's interactions. It continues for years, and it differs from the experiences and the behaviors usually expected of people. Personality disorders. So these guys have a problem with the personality. It's a disruptive personality. It's one that doesn't allow them to get along with other individuals. The rigid traits of people with personality disorders often lead to psychological pain for the individual and social or occupational difficulties. The disorder may also bring pain to others, and this is, of course, the biggest problem. So normally, as humans, we try to get along with everybody. We try to say things that are nice. We don't try to insult people. But people with personality disorders, potentially, they don't have that filter. They don't know how to get along with everybody else. People who are suffering from autism spectrum disorder, their problem is they don't relate with people on the outside very well. So they have a difficult time knowing what to say and what not to say, because they can't look at you and tell that you're disappointed or that you're unhappy or whatever. They can't do that. So they will continue to act like they were acting before. And for that reason, they have a difficult time dealing with society. Okay. Personality disorders typically become recognizable in adolescence or early adulthood, although some start during childhood. If somebody has ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, a lot of times we will see that this individual is never going to be able to get along with people. So we diagnose them with ODD, and if they don't change their personalities, if they don't start acting like everybody else around them, then we diagnose them with conduct disorder as they get older. And if these individuals still are not able to change the way that they act, they can't change their person. If they don't change their personality, then eventually we diagnose them with antisocial personality disorder. Why antisocial personality disorder? What does antisocial mean? They don't understand, they can't deal with people in a social setting. So they are antisocial. So they have antisocial personality disorder. Some of these individuals manipulate society. And that's why they're such good liars, because they manipulate society. So it's really fascinating looking at all of these select individuals. If you've ever been around somebody with antisocial personality disorder, you never know whether they're telling the truth or whether they're telling a lie. You never know whether they're trying to get something from you or if they really believe what they're saying. You never know. It drives you crazy.
Does this disorder also cause anxiety?
Antisocial personality disorder, the very opposite. This person is never anxious. They will, they're brutal. They'll just do anything.
Is this something that a person chooses for themselves?
No. No, not usually. But they can be conditioned to act this way. A lot of bullies are that way. Bullies are if they have a parent that has antisocial personality disorder and they don't want them to take any crap off of anybody, they will train them to be bullies, to beat up on other kids.
I guess maybe that was a better way to say it, because I was thinking about people who get abused in one form or another, whether it's bullying or how they say like certain things, even domestic violence, certain things work in cycles,
Exactly.
learned behavior.
Right. Right. So they will become abusive parents. Somebody that's abused as a child will potentially become an abusive parent because they think that that's the proper way to raise a child, is by abusing them. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Yeah. And they'll tell you that over and over again. Exactly. What are we doing? These disorders are really hard to treat. I don't mean to be laughing, but boy, I'll tell you what. You get a hold of one of these individuals, you get them in counseling, and one of the things that happens is you can't change the way that they think. Mainly because this is their personality, and they think that their personality is okay. This is the only personality that they've ever had. So they don't want to change it. They've been able to adapt and to survive with this personality. So it's almost impossible to get them to change. It has been estimated, you can't give them, it's not like you can throw drugs at them and fix them. It's not like you can shoot an SSRI at them and make them happy. That works with depression. It ain't going to work with antisocial personality disorder. We don't have a pill that changes your personality.
Is it just through CBT?
I'm sorry?
Is it just through CBT then?
Well, you can try to counsel them. But remember, these are the best liars in the world. I know. And they'll tell you anything you want to hear. But they're liars. You can't trust them. It's like trying to treat somebody with OCD. They think everything that they're doing is right, is correct. That I'm wrong because I'm the one that is trying to change their rituals. OCD is almost impossible to treat. And so is antisocial personality disorder. Actually, all these personality disorders are nearly impossible to treat. It has been estimated that between 4 to 15% of all adults may have a personality disorder. Most of the people in prison, why in the world are they in prison? What did they do? What horrible thing did they do? And why did they do it over and over and over again? Why do they keep robbing people? Why do they keep beating people up? Well, potentially they have antisocial personality disorder, and they think that this is the correct behavior, and that's one of the reasons why they're in prison. And that's why they'll stay there. Even if they come out, what's the next thing they'll do? Well, they'll beat somebody up again. They will assault somebody. Some individuals are not particularly bothered by their own personality patterns. They may not seek cooperate with or accept clinical information or involvement. It is common for people in treatment to have personality and other mental disorders concurrently. So a lot of these individuals not only have personality disorders, but they also have depression or they have anxiety. It's not their personality that's causing their anxiety because they think it's correct. No, their anxiety comes from someplace else. Maybe not having enough money. Maybe their spouse breaking up with them. There are significant overlaps among the symptoms of 10 DSM-5 personality disorders. We're going to talk about the personality disorders right now. Reliability problems have plagued the personality disorder classifications, and that's one of the reasons why if you read the DSM-4 and you read the DSM-5, we have different personality disorders. We have different categories. The DSM-3 reliability field trials found kappa values of 0.56 and 0.65 across 2 phases. The DSM-5 field trials found the reliability for borderline personality disorder to be a questionable 0.36. Borderline personality disorder, I talk about it all the time. Borderline personality disorder has a lot of aspects to it. One of the aspects is that in relationships, they have a really hard time maintaining relationships. For one thing, they don't trust the person that they're having a relationship with. Usually they have stolen this person from somebody else. So they don't trust this person to stay with them. But at the same time, they don't trust that person actually loves them. They think, anyway, they have a really hard time with relationships. We'll talk more about borderline in just a second. Borderline's a lot of fun. However, personality disorders appear to be very common among the mental health population. Nearly 1/3 of the patients interviewed by Zimmerman et al. In 2007 met the criteria for at least one personality disorder, and when the personality disorder not otherwise specified category was included, the rate increased to almost 1/2 of the group. So a lot of times you know that this person has a problem, but you're not exactly sure if it's borderline, if it's antisocial personality disorder, if it's schizoid. There's so many different choices. You're not exactly sure which one it is, but it's one of them. You know that they've got a problem. Yes, sir.
Can postpartum cause this?
Yes. Yeah. But not normally. Normally what happens is that when you come back, postpartum, I'm sorry, I was thinking PTSD. You're talking about
I was
pregnancy.
surprised. I was surprised by your answer.
Yeah, you're talking about pregnancy, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Postpartum. Yeah. Actually, we see this over and over and over again with women after they've had babies. This is one of the things we have to be very careful of. We're going to actually talk about postpartum psychosis and postpartum depression in another chapter. This can very definitely happen. I had a friend that had his wife had a baby, and I met her before. She was just a little bit off, just a tad off. But after she had the baby, she was totally different, completely different. She wanted the baby so badly before she had the baby. Once she actually gave birth, if they gave her the baby, she'd pretend that she was going to hold it, and then she wouldn't be able to. Her hands got so weak that she couldn't hold it. She dropped the baby. And this happened the first time, and they went, "Oh, wait a minute, maybe there's something wrong. Is there really something wrong with your hands?" "I don't know. All of a sudden I couldn't feel anymore within my hands." And so they said, "Well, we need to make sure that that's taken care of. Maybe that's a neurological problem." And of course, afterwards, they checked out her hands and they found out that everything was okay. And after a couple days, they tried to hand her the baby again, and same thing happened. She didn't want the baby, but she didn't tell anybody. I mean, her demeanor changed completely. She had a psychotic breakdown.
So can that happen not just with the baby, but with her partner as well?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. And actually, I won't tell you what she said about his penis, but she was not very happy with his body parts, and she was insulting him a great deal. It was his fault. The baby wasn't right. He was a bad father. He had bad genes. Everything. I mean, she just piled it on. And of course, she said really negative things about his person, which was really kind of unfortunate. But and he was actually a friend of mine. He worked for me, and so for the next 6 months, he's trying to get this lady to take care of the baby. They couldn't send her home with the baby because they were afraid she'd do it harm. So they kept her in the hospital, in the psych ward. And when he moved, he was from Idaho. When he moved back to Idaho from Omaha, she didn't go with it. Postpartum psychosis.
So if that sets in, can that stay with a person for life?
As far as this lady was concerned, I was there for another 2 years, and she stayed there, and she blamed me for her pregnancy, for her bad pregnancy. I didn't have anything to do with it. I'm sure I didn't have anything to do with her pregnancy. But she blamed me, and when I would go to visit her, he would call me on the phone and ask me if I'd go up and see and make sure his wife was okay. And I'd go up and I'd visit her, and all of a sudden she's acting like I'm her husband. And she's saying really negative things about me. It's really kind of bizarre. Yeah, her personality changed, or stayed exactly the same after the whole episode. I told my mother my mother was a nurse, and she had worked with somebody else who had postpartum psychosis. And she said this lady stayed the same way for the rest of her life. And she died in her 70s, I guess, and she gave birth at 19. Yeah, and so for the rest of her life, they were afraid to let her out because they were afraid she might try to hurt kids, try to hurt babies. So they couldn't let her out of the hospital.
I know a lady that just recently, like a couple years ago, got diagnosed with postpartum. They took a look back at her history, and she had children early on in her teens. And they said she was just undiagnosed with it and had been affecting her whole life.
Oh, wow.
But it didn't happen. It happened on her last child.
Right.
All the other children, she was fine.
So she didn't kill anybody?
She didn't kill anybody, but she didn't want to raise her last child. She didn't want to do the baby weight, essentially. Wanted nothing to do with it. Even as an adult, there was that estranged relationship.
Right.
And then the lady had a lot of other episodes with violence.
Right.
And she got help or diagnosed it as postpartum, undiagnosed postpartum all those years.
Yeah, psychosis probably, I would imagine. They had that case of the lady in Massachusetts that had 6 kids, and they all died of SIDS. And then they found out later, after the last child, they exhumed all the other babies, and they discovered they'd all been smothered to death. And
So-
she had smothered them all.
Can it happen like one of the children?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it can happen at any point.
Because I think with this one, lady particularly, it happened on the last child, and so she was close with all of her other children.
Okay.
And as adults, supported them, and this and that, and it was just that one child she was always ostracized and didn't want anything to do with that child.
Yeah, that's a possibility. And it potentially had something to do with menopause. I hate to pick on change of life, but yeah, it could. I mean, you have a hormone change, you have a hormone imbalance, or a different balance. So it's possible that may have had something to do with that. Same thing happens when you have a baby. You have a baby, and you have, of course, you have a high progesterone level during your pregnancy, and then when you go back to not being pregnant anymore, your progesterone level goes down, and you don't feel nearly as positive about things. So the hormones change with pregnancy. The positive, you're very, very positive during your pregnancy because of the high progesterone level, and then of course afterwards your progesterone level tanks, or goes down anyway. It goes back to normal. It goes back to what's normal without being. Yeah, so that's a possibility. What am I talking about? Am I lost again? Okay, thanks. Nearly 1/3 of the patients interviewed. Okay, so we already talked about it. Okay, we already talked about it. Okay. Personality disorder are difficult to treat. Personality disorders are difficult to treat. Comorbidity with other mental disorders are common. Up to 50% of patients with either schizotypal personality disorder or borderline personality disorder also meet the criteria for depressive disorder. And that's usually what's happening with borderline. One of the things about people with borderline personality disorder, they threaten suicide a lot. And It's because they are depressed. When are they depressed? When they lose a relationship. Why did they lose a relationship? Usually it's because they pushed somebody away. Now all of a sudden they're depressed. And all of a sudden they're calling the person up on the phone and saying, "I'm going to kill myself if you don't come back to me," that kind of thing.
So are they really suicidal?
Yeah. Well, no, not really. They're seeking attention. They're attention seeking. So they're not really trying to kill themselves. If they do, they'll do something like they'll take cold tablets or something. Something that's not going to kill them. Or they'll take 3 or 4 aspirin and say that they're trying to kill themselves. And then they'll go into the hospital and you'll pump their stomach and you get 3 aspirins out. Or they'll cut themselves, yeah. Knowing, of course, that they're not really cutting people. They're cutting. They become skin. They're not really trying to bleed to death. They're just trying to hurt themselves. And whose fault is it? Well, it's the fault of the guy that broke up with them. So the guy goes back to him, starts the relationship again. What time is it? How am I doing?
23 minutes.
4:20. That's right. So the guy goes back to him. And as soon as he goes back and starts acting like he likes them again, guess what happens? They start pushing him away. So then he leaves, and then they threaten suicide again. And of course he comes back to keep them from killing themselves. And what happens? They start pushing him away. So it's this push me, pull me thing, and this constant battle between them acting erratically and when the question is, how long will this guy put up with this kind of crap? It's usually a female. I'm sorry, it's usually a female, but sometimes it's a guy. I had a friend back in Omaha. I'm not Omaha, but Iowa, who was borderline, and he was the same way. I mean, he was just push me, pull me things. I mean, he'd be your friend, and all of a sudden he didn't want to have anything to do with you. You know, it's one of those kind of deals. And of course, he's a guy, so what do I care? You know, okay, so you're not friend. I don't care. And then all of a sudden, he's coming to my office, "But you haven't called me lately. What's happening?" And I'm going, "Well, okay, I'll call you." And then you go to his office, and he goes, "What are you doing here? I don't want to talk to you. What's going on?" You know, it's one of those. It's just this constant thing. And of course, I'm a psychologist, so I'm supposed to be able to deal with this kind of It's not a lot of fun. Anyway, eventually, and he kept threatening suicide. Not to me, but to other individuals. He was, I was talking about him in the other class. He's gay. And he wasn't trying to start an affair with me. He just needed that kind of affirmation. But he was pretty good looking, so I don't know. Okay. Nah, I don't think he was trying to start an affair with me. Let's go lift. Okay. Up to 50% of, okay, we already dealt with that. In many cases, treatment is directed at particular deficits or symptoms rather than any underlying condition. And of course, we're constantly treating symptoms. And because we're dealing with their symptoms, a lot of times we're not really fixing them. We can't fix them because we're dealing with symptoms rather than the base cause. So what is the base cause of a personality disorder? What would the base cause be?
Stress.
If it's stress, it's not stress now.
Chemical change. Chemical imbalance.
Puberty? Is that a chemical imbalance?
What?
They developed this personality in their past, and now they have a personality problem. So how in the world, what do we do? How do we fix it? Can we go back and change the personalities? No. And the other problem is, of course, they're not able to get along in society, but they think that their personality is fine. Is there anybody in here that doesn't like their personality? That hates who they are? No? But what if you had a personality disorder? Would you recognize it as a problem? Probably not. And that's the problem. Nobody's going to change. I'm not going to change. I'm sorry. But what you see is what you get. And the reality is, it's the same way with everybody. Everybody,
Yeah.
what you see is what you got. Nobody wants to change, right? Or, right. Personality disorders are grouped into 3 clusters. This is fun because it was completely different in the DSM-4. But now we have these 3 clusters. One is the odd behavior cluster. Okay. This sounds like a Monty Python skit or something. Odd behavior cluster. The second one is dramatic behavior cluster. And the last one is high anxiety cluster. The first cluster, odd behavior cluster, includes paranoid personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder, and schizotypal personality disorder. The dramatic behavior cluster is antisocial personality disorder, the borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder. That's the fun one. These guys are just a blast. And the last one is high anxiety cluster. These individuals have avoidant personality disorder, dependent personality disorder, and obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Okay, so we have 2 different types of obsessive compulsive disorders, as interesting as that is. Cluster A personality disorders, this involves symptoms described as odd or eccentric. Normally these symptoms are not of sufficient intensity to include delusions and hallucinations. They look kind of schizophrenic. They do, except they don't have the delusions and the hallucinations. They have odd ideas and they have odd behaviors, but it's not schizophrenia. Why? Because there are no delusions and hallucinations. Although when the individuals are under sufficient stress, brief psychotic states may occur, and sometimes they will have these episodes of psychotic behavior, where they will have delusions and they will have hallucinations. But are they schizophrenic? And the answer is no, because if we treat them with antipsychotic medications, it doesn't work. This is transitory. It's not going to stay. Yes.
Can they display like manic behavior?
Yes. They can act.
Really happy one minute and then just really...
That's bipolar disorder. But they can be. Some of their psychotic mannerisms can be manic. But the manic depression is bipolar disorder. And that is a psychosis. These guys are not psychotic. Why aren't they psychotic? Because they don't have ideas or they don't have delusions and hallucinations. But they do have erratic behavior from time to time. But usually under stress.
What if their disorder is causing them like sleeping problems, and then they start to develop audio and visual
Hallucinations? Then we would probably diagnose them as schizophrenic. We treat them with antipsychotics and whatever. A lot of times we will diagnose somebody with something. It looks like this disorder, but when we treat it with the medication that works on that disorder, it doesn't work. And then we know that it's not that.
So it's either because that medicine doesn't work on them, or it's the wrong diagnosis.
Usually it's the wrong diagnosis. It really all depends on how egotistical the doctor is as to whether he accepts the fact that he made a mistake or the medication just doesn't work. You think I'm kidding. I wish I were. Oh man, what a mess. These disorders invariably involve restrictions of social connection with others as seen in schizophrenia, including extreme suspiciousness, social withdrawal, peculiar ways of thinking and perceiving things. Such behaviors often leave the person isolated, of course. So these are the individuals that lock themselves in their houses and rarely come out. These are the individuals that love the fact that now there is an app that you can use, and you can call these people up on the telephone and they'll deliver your groceries for you. They never have to go outside. They don't have agoraphobia, but they don't trust the outside. They don't want to go outside. They don't want to interact with people. The agoraphobia is, I'm afraid to go outside because I'm afraid something bad is going to happen. But this isn't agoraphobia. This is the fact that I just don't want to go outside. I am suspicious of other individuals, but it's not the same thing. Agoraphobics want to go outside. They can't. They just can't because their anxiety is too great. These individuals, you can't get them to go outside with a shoe on. It's like me on a weekend. I won't come out of my Hogan. No, I go outside and I get wood, okay? And I take it back inside so that I can burn. Okay, that's me. Do I seem like I don't want to go outside? I know. Me on the weekend. About 5.7% of the population meets the criteria for at least one of these cluster A diagnoses. 5.7% of the population, that's a lot of people. And most of it's schizotypal and schizo. People with paranoid personality disorder are distrustful, they're suspicious, and expect others to take advantage of them in nearly all circumstances. Unfortunately, we give these guys guns, and they will buy loads of guns. They will buy lots of guns and lots of ammunition because they're afraid of somebody out there. Something is out there. There's a danger out there, and they're paranoid. And these are the last people in the world that need guns because they don't trust anybody. They watch too many cop episodes on television, and they think that all those bald-headed Mexican guys and cartel people are after them, and all the African Americans in the world trying to steal their cans of food, or their ammunition, I don't know. They do not show a sense of humor and rarely relax or let down their guard in social situations. So if you talk to these individuals, they don't laugh at anything. They take everything seriously. They're the individuals that don't watch Fox News. They watch those other television shows that talk about how the conspiracy theorists, the individuals talking about conspiracy theories. That's what they watch. And they believe all that stuff. All that stuff. They really do. And you can't make them smile. You can't joke with them. Their guns are serious, by God. And I've run into these people on Facebook. It's scary. I told you about the guy that wants to shoot me the next time I go back to Indiana. He said he's going to shoot me. He's going to kill me. And he's got deer rifles. And he showed me a picture of the deer that he shot. It's hanging by his back leg. I know, he's going to shoot me. I said the wrong thing to him. And now I'm his public enemy number 57 or something. Who knows? Man, I'll tell you what. And I was trying to joke with him, and there's nothing. Oh, he's serious about everything. But he's going to kill me. Of course, I did go back in February, and he didn't shoot me, so maybe he didn't know I was there. But I'll tell you what, I'm in the middle of the gymnasium, in the center of the floor, and I'm looking up and looking all the way around just to make sure that he's not up there with a deer rifle. You think I'm kidding?
So it transferred onto you. Now you're paranoid.
Now I'm paranoid. Well, I'm paranoid to him. I'm not paranoid here. I trust everybody here. You guys are okay. But geez, that guy, he threatened to shoot me. Paranoid personality disorder. They take offense readily and they hold grudges easily for some unintentional causes, a slight that they have interpreted as malevolent. Of course, that's what happened on Facebook. He's very conservative. I said something liberal. Worst mistake I've ever made. Now all of a sudden I'm a target for him. I look like a deer. These characteristics help to keep them isolated from others, and they typically have few or no close friends or confidants. This individual has children. He has male children that he hunts with, and that's it. His wife left a long time ago. But he's got 2 male children, and they will come over and hunt with him. But he lives by himself in a cabin in the woods with all of his guns and all of his ammunition. And he eats venison because, wow, by golly, he's a good hunter. Anyway, yeah, and I was looking for him. He's got this big, heavy beard, wears hunting outfits, You know what I'm talking about. They look like military BDUs. They look like battle dressing, but green, of course.
You sound paranoid.
But I'm not paranoid. He's paranoid. Okay.
Denial's the first sign.
Jealousy and envy, together with an excessive view of their own self-importance, are characteristic of these individuals. So you really don't want to mess with him. He also drinks a little bit, mostly Jack Daniels. That's his favorite drink. He put that on on his Facebook page. We are not Facebook friends anymore. I can tell you his name, but he's friends with my brother.
You need to talk to your brother.
Oh, I don't even talk to my brother anymore. After the election, my brother. Well, I won't tell you. Well, my brother voted for one guy, and I voted for the other lady. And now my brother won't talk to me. And guess what? My brother's got guns too. That's the part.
Is there something the DSM-6 about that too? About people, I noticed there was a lot of stories that came out about wives running over husbands that voted. They had a different kind of vote too, and where people left their husband and wives, like families split up because of the vote.
There's nothing in the DSM-5, unfortunately. And it makes sense, but we've never seen any of this before. We didn't see this with Obama and McCain. We didn't see this with Obama and Romney. Who else? We've never seen this before. This is something brand new. It seemed like this president is creating more. He creates chaos. He creates conflicts, and we've never had a president do that before. So this is something brand new. Maybe with the DSM-6, we'll see.
Not to defend Trump, but I always think of like when things go the way they're supposed to, people don't get paranoid.
Right.
But when it goes a little out of order, people get really paranoid.
Sure.
And I always wonder if it's because he's not really a Democrat or not really a Republican. And it doesn't fit, that square peg doesn't go right in the round square. It's throwing everybody off.
You may be right. I don't know. We'll have to wait and find out. We'll have to watch to see if North Korea really does bomb us or whatever. Or the Russians. You saw the video. Did you see the video? They're going to bomb Florida, evidently, and we don't have any defense against it. I know. This should be very interesting. This is completely different than we've ever seen before. We've never seen this before. So, yeah. So, who knows what's going to happen in the future. But we need to keep watching, just to find out if Bobby Huffman really is going to shoot me. I don't even know this kid. He was in my brother's class, and I don't even know him. Yet he's going to shoot me if I ever go back to Indiana. But I was watching for him. Sheldon doesn't care, but I cared.
He's probably sneezing now.
I'm sorry?
He's probably sneezing now.
He's texting me right now.
I was thinking.
You can stay with me. You can stay in my house. I'll put you up. Just take him out just before midterms.
You are paranoid.
Am I reading your mind? Is that what's happening? No, of course not. The paranoid pattern of interacting with others may be traceable to childhood, but must begin by early adulthood for the diagnosis to be used. During periods of stress, those with paranoid personality disorder can experience brief psychotic episodes, as we were talking about before. So there are a lot of people that are paranoid out there, and these individuals stay in their houses. They lock themselves up. I have another friend, and this one doesn't want to shoot me. He considers himself a libertarian, but he brags about all of his guns. He has not just AR-15s, he also has an AK-47. He's a vet. He was a tanker. I can't figure out why tankers want rifles. I don't want to. Wait a minute, your dad's a tanker. Does he have lots of AK-47s and this? But he brags about his 18,000 rounds of ammunition, and he will swap it
out, I guess ammunition's only good for 5 years or something, so he'll swap out his ammunition. And so he spends like thousands of dollars replacing all these bullets for all these guns. I know, it's really interesting. Paranoid, he's just a little bit paranoid. And I asked him, why do you have all these guns? And he says, to protect myself. And I asked him, who are you protecting yourself against? That was my question. And he didn't have an answer. He didn't give me an answer. And I'm just wondering if he's afraid of black people. He could be afraid of American Indians, but geez, he's in Indiana. There's no American Indians over there, despite the name, of course. Anyway, I know it's named Indiana. There's no Indians in the state. It just doesn't make any sense at all. Anyway, yeah, so he's paranoid as well. Co-occurring disorders tend to include major depressive disorder, agoraphobia, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and substance disorders. National surveys have estimated the prevalence of paranoid personality disorder at between 2.3% and 4.4% of the general population. Paranoid personality disorder is more commonly diagnosed among males than it is females. Why aren't females paranoid like males are? What's wrong with males?
Testosterone.
I'm sorry? What's wrong with us?
Testosterone.
Testosterone, that's what's wrong with us? We've got all that testosterone. That makes us paranoid.
Aggressive.
It makes us aggressive, but it doesn't make us paranoid. Does it? Wait a minute, steroids do, don't they? They give you a roid rage. So what is wrong with males? Why are we more paranoid than females?
Because I'm weak.
He just said we're strong.
Men are all pretty buff.
Are you sure you want to sit back there with those guys? Don't you want to move up here with all the normal people?
They just put their hats on.
Pull them down on over their eyes.
To do with like social support,
So-
social support system.
So women get more social support than men?
What about
Too
masculinity?
much.
Like a masculinity issue?
Right. So who's going to be bullied more? I mean, that both fits with what you guys are talking about. So who would be bullied more who would be more likely to be bullied? Males or females? Males? Males? Yeah. Males. You were right. It is a masculinity issue, but part of the masculinity issue has to do with the fact that men are more likely to be picked on by other men. I keep picking on Sheldon.
Is it like too much of a
Yeah.
I nurture
Among the females are more nurturing. And females get more social support. So it'd make more sense that men would be more paranoid. Because, I mean, it's like me picking on Sheldon. I just keep picking on him and he gets paranoid. And he calls Bobby Huffman on the telephone to have him come out and take me out.
my
Triple
God.
disorder by the time I leave.
Yeah. So,
Antisocial.
Emery, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I noticed that, I always thought it was testosterone, but when you look at, like a prison, for instance, people, it's full of people with, dissociative personal disorders, really people who need mental help.
Right. And they're not getting it.
And the women, they do have some violence, but
Right.
it's not as feminine as over on the male side of the house.
That's a good point. That is a good point. But one of the things we noticed that when we put women in prison together, their testosterone level increases. I know, this is kind of fun. Yeah. 4:20. It is time. Thank you. It's time to go. Okay, we'll stop right here. Next time we'll